Did you know that KTM already have a fully working prototype of the Electric Duke? But I promise, the production ready bike is gonna come after GTA 6. So I decided to convert this 2010 125cc Duke to electric. And you guys are gonna come with me on an 800-kilometer road trip through beautiful Swedish nature, only relying on public charging stations. So let's see what equipment I need to make this trip possible. So for a trip like this, we of course need fast charging. So we'll have this external 1.5 kilowatt charger, and then we have a 2 kilowatt onboard charger, which is still kinda slow, 3.6 kilowatt for the 8.9 kilowatt hour battery. And we're only going to be able to charge at AC stations, so we have this AC adapter from type 2 to a regular household plug, and that's basically it. A charger in my backpack is actually the only thing I need to make this trip possible. And I of course had to double check the bike so everything was working, so no wires were scuffed, since this is a DIY project, and everything looked fine. So next morning I fully charged the bike to 100% and we were off to the first stretch, which was 90 kilometers. I can also point out that I held a max speed of 80 kilometers per hour, and I tried to hypermile behind every truck I could find. And based on my calculations, we could get a range of 160 kilometers on a full battery, but I much rather prefer do 100 kilometer stretches and take a break. I can point out though that the bike took around 1.5 hours to charge 80% in between the 100 kilometer stretches, but then you have some time to enjoy the place you're at. But the charging wasn't the worst. The worst thing about this trip was the battery overheating. So after 3 charges, which was almost 400 kilometers, the battery was almost at 45 degrees Celsius, which is the maximum you should have in a lithium-ion battery. This DIY bike was never made for road tripping, so that's why it doesn't have any cooling. And after multiple cycles of charging and driving, the battery just piles up of heat. But enough with the boring specs, let me show you how the trip went. And ChatGPT beautifully printed everything out for me after putting in all the information. So on the left you can see all the stretches I wrote, how many kilowatt hours and percentage I've used, what the distance was, and then my efficiency. In the last runs it was a lot of headwind and I didn't have any truck to hypermile behind. That's why my consumption was so high. And also on the farthest right you can see how much my range changes just based on how fast I drive and how much headwind I have. Now we're at the second stop of the day. We covered 160 kilometers and arrived at 11%. So now I have around 2 hours to just chill and relax and eat something. And just like that, with some editing magic, we are at 100% and ready to go. I had so much headwind for the last stretch that I didn't even make it 120 kilometers. I had to stop after 50 kilometers and top it out at the random charger I didn't even plan to stop at. And then 40 kilometers later, we arrived at this beautiful place called the Järvsö, with only 3% battery left, since I only charged to like 40%. So I went to pick up the keys to the place we were going to stay at, and look how beautiful, up on the mountain, bike charging, sun up even at 12 o'clock at night. And now we're in for our second day. I've been charging the bike up with a 5 amp charger, which is very slow, but I managed to reach 80%. And today's goal is to go to one of these wind turbines, which I've heard are huge. And after spending over 1 hour on this gravel road, I didn't think I would get anywhere. I did look it up on Google Earth and it said that it's supposed to be a wind turbine somewhere here, but I was just driving and driving and driving until finally I saw the wind turbine. And trust me, these things are huge and make like a very scary sound. And are we 450 kilometers from home with a DIY bike? Yes sir. Might it break down? Maybe. But tomorrow is the time we're going home. So I headed back to camp to get a full charge, and we were on our way back home. And on our trip back, it was just a copy and paste of the charging stations. But this time we drove with the wind, not against it. So I didn't have to spend so much time at each charging station. And I actually managed to save 2 hours of my trip, just based on the wind, since I this time drove with the wind, not against it. And after a 9-hour drive, I finally made it back home. Bike safe, fully working, battery almost overheated, but everything still works. But here comes the conclusion for all you DIYers and for my next bike project. The only thing that's missing in this bike is battery cooling and faster charging. And I guess we can solve the battery cooling part by just allowing air to go into the battery and not as it's right now with a bunch of foam that isolates it. And for the charging, you cannot charge at DC stations since they don't go down to 72 volts, but what you can do is find an 11 kilowatt AC charger and use 3 chargers at 3.6 kilowatts, so you can get quite a fast charge. And thank you so much for watching, and I will keep you guys updated on how the bike is doing. We're right now at 17,000 kilometers at the time of filming this video, and there haven't been any issues with the bike so far. So keep your projects going, and I'll see you in the next one.